This podcast is intended to provide information for educational purposes only and to serve as a starting point for you to have a conversation with your personal physician. Nothing stated on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Consult with your physician before undertaking or changing any treatment plan. After bariatric surgery, specifically a gastric bypass, but we do see this with sleeve patients as well, the alcohol, it's almost like you injected it into a vein. It just goes boom.
Welcome back. I'm back. I know you missed me.
We missed you totally.
Welcome back to the Pound of Cure Weight Loss Podcast, episode 28.
Yep.
How a gastric bypass could ruin your life?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I know.
What are we going to talk about?
I bet most of my patients know the answer to this.
I think so too.
Yeah. And very soon you will too. So Zoe, talk to us. How was the honeymoon?
Oh, it was a dream.
Yeah.
It truly, truly was. I mean, 40 hours of travel time on either side to get there and get back was less of a dream.
Yeah, that sounds rough.
You know, we made up for it by, I felt like I was there for a long time.
Can't they get to the moon faster than that? I feel like they can.
So, I don't know. I've never been to the moon, but the Maldives was incredible. They had really great food. I ate a lot of seafood. Matt, my husband, does not like seafood, so really? I ate plenty for the both of us.
Okay, good.
Lots of great tropical fruit and veggies. And so, anyway, I have, you can't really tell. I have the most natural tan I've had probably in my entire life.
Perfect. You went to U of A, so that was part of the rule book was you got to have some kind of fake tan, right?
Fake bake, yeah, exactly.
Fake bake, is that what they called it? All right. Well, so let's move into our first segment. This is in the news. This is an article from Medscape, and it's where our title came from, and it's Alcohol to Blame, Weight Regain After Bariatric Surgery. And so this article kind of talks a little bit about how alcohol can cause weight gain and how there is an increased risk of alcoholism after the surgery. I think it was about 8 years ago, our national society, the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, or the ASMBS, they put out a position paper talking about alcoholism after bariatric surgery. And I think, for a long time, people talked about transfer addiction and how this is taking your addiction for food and now transferring it over to alcohol because you can't eat food. I think as we've kind of learned more about this, we realize that's probably not the mechanism.
It's more so about the absorption.
It's about the absorption, exactly. And so first of all, one alcoholic beverage can put you over the legal limit for driving after a gastric bypass if you're a woman, and possibly for some men too. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something that you have to recognize. And it's with normally when you drink, if you have a normal stomach, the alcohol kind of sits in the stomach. And we've all kind of experienced this. You have a drink and it doesn't hit you right away. It takes 10, 20 minutes. And then suddenly it kind of starts to creep in a little bit. After bariatric surgery, specifically a gastric bypass, but we do see this with sleeve patients as well. The alcohol, it's almost like you injected it into a vein. It just goes boom. Right into it's absorbed very rapidly because the alcohol goes right through your tiny stomach into the small intestine where alcohol is absorbed very rapidly. Mm-hmm. There's people sober up at different rates, but a lot of people will tell me they get drunk very quickly and then sober up very quickly. Mm-hmm. And with alcoholism, what they see is sometimes it's that change in your alcohol levels. That's what triggers the pleasure centers in your brain.
Chasing that high kind of thing.
Yeah. And so you can kind of, because of the change in your alcohol levels amplified after the surgery, it can be more addictive. And we see a 5 times higher rate of development of alcoholism after a gastric bypass and a 2 times higher rate after a sleeve. That also to me says this is not transfer addiction, this is absorption, right? Because the 2 surgeries, how much difference is there in people's capacity for eating with those surgeries? Very similar, very similar ability to eat. Yet we see a remarkably higher rate of alcoholism after gastric bypass. And if you look at the absorption pattern of alcohol, it's very different after a bypass than it is after a sleeve. And so the way a gastric bypass could ruin your life is if you go through and you lose 100 pounds and you have resolution of your diabetes and all your health problems and everything is great, but then you lose control of your ability to modify your alcohol intake and you become an alcoholic, the wheels fell off the bus, right? You know, and it's kind of similar to what we see when we talk about weight gaining medications, right? We see Abilify and some of these other medications that for some people are so critical to their mental health. And that even though they may be causing weight gain, it's that mental health that is even more important than your weight, than your diabetes, than, you know, if you aren't healthy from an emotional perspective, it doesn't matter what else is happening in your life. You know, you're just not going to be able to be happy or enjoy it.
Well, and in addition to the increased risk of alcoholism there's a lot of weight gain.
A lot.
I mean, we think about alcohol has 7 calories per gram.
Yeah.
So that's basically halfway between what a carbohydrate has and what fat has.
Yeah.
So carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9 calories per gram. Alcohol has 7. Guess what? You don't feel full and satisfied when you're drinking alcohol. That's what we call empty calories.
Right. And truthfully, alcohol, people talk about how marijuana makes you eat, but alcohol probably makes you eat a lot too.
Well, and also it decreases your inhibitions. So, you know, then maybe you've been really good. I hate moralizing food, so don't use good and bad in terms of food. But for this example, maybe you've been really good all week and then you have some drinks and then you no longer want to have the salad that you have prepped at home for dinner on Friday night. Let's go and get pizza.
Yeah.
So it's not only the empty calories from the alcohol, it's the snowball effect of and then maybe the hangover food the next day.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it just keeps going.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in harm reduction. You know, I think that there's one school of thought that we should criminalize drug addiction and lock up everybody who struggles with addiction or alcoholism. And I think a lot of times that misses the point of the disease, just like we missed the point of the disease of obesity. And so I talk openly about patients. In Arizona, marijuana is legal. And we don't see an increased rate of dependency. We see plenty of dependency and plenty of problems with marijuana. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, you know, smoke up, everything is great. Marijuana is a wonder drug. I don't think that at all. The right amount of marijuana to use is 0 as well. However, if we're comparing alcohol to marijuana, alcohol has a 5 times increased risk. And alcohol is the only drug that you can actually die of withdrawal from. No other drugs, not even heroin. Withdrawing from heroin is a miserable experience, but you will not die. But you can absolutely die from alcohol withdrawal.
And it's the most legal one.
And it is the most legal and most accepted drug. Absolutely. And so I have an open conversation with my gastric bypass patients, especially we ask about marijuana use. And what I find is actually marijuana use is more common now than alcohol use. Marijuana does not have an increased risk of addiction or dependency. You can still become dependent on marijuana. There is risk of using it too much, but having a gastric bypass does not change that risk. But it does change that risk with alcoholism. And so I think that's something, you know, I recommend no alcohol for all our bariatric patients. Right. And if you don't follow that, and I get it if you don't, then less than you drink currently.
Yeah. And avoid the sugary drinks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so you get the 7 calories from the alcohol,
right.
And then there's usually 15, 20 grams of sugar in, you know, most of the drinks out there, right? Well, let's move into our patient story and hear from Janet. Janet's really a great advocate for our program and has had a remarkable success with both Mounjaro and a gastric bypass.
All right. Well, welcome, Janet. We're super happy to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
So why don't you tell us your story? Just kind of, you know, first of all, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay.
And kind of what led you to look at bariatric surgery and to seek out some help with weight loss.
Okay. So my name is Janet, and I am a nurse at a local hospital. And I've worked in healthcare for about 15 years, and I felt like a fraud. So being overweight, it felt very weird to be in healthcare and not be a product of what I should be selling, in essence.
Yeah.
So what led me is probably a very typical story. I was not overweight at all as a child. I didn't get overweight probably until I had my daughter, was close to 30. Then I had some issues where I had to have a hysterectomy, and that was all. I gained probably 70 pounds the year after I had a hysterectomy.
Did they take your ovaries too?
Yes. So I had one ovary removed, and unfortunately I had to go back and then have everything removed.
Yeah. So you basically had surgical menopause at a relatively young age.
I was 39.
39.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's a recipe for massive weight gain.
Yes, it was awful. It was awful.
And how old were you when you at your last pregnancy?
She was born when I was 27.
27. Okay. So pregnancy older in life causes a lot of weight gain
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
But for you, it was really surgical menopause.
It was.
At 39.
At 39.
Yeah. I mean, so you lost probably 10 years of menstrual cycles that
Correct.
were normal
Yes.
hormonal
On
functions.
hormones.
And so you gained weight very rapidly.
Very rapidly.
And that must have been
It was devastating.
Devastating.
It was devastating. I
Yeah.
felt, and then I did some very unhealthy things to lose weight, and none of them stuck.
Yeah.
And it was awful. And I didn't want to be that person, but I felt like no matter what I did, I never could lose weight. You'd lose the 10 pounds here, you'd
Yeah.
lose the 15 pounds there, and then you gain back double whatever you lost. It was awful.
And
Right.
that yo-yoing just kind of
Yeah.
kept depressing your metabolism. And
Yes.
And that really is the definition of the disease of obesity, right? There's kind of obesity, the condition where, I eat fast food and drink soda and I eat an incredibly heavily processed diet and I just gain weight and weight and weight. But when I pair off and when I start eating like a normal person, then the weight comes back off. That's not obesity, the disease. That's obesity, the condition. And we see that, right? We see that, Zoe. But you had it where you were doing everything right.
It was crazy to me that I was overweight. I
Yeah.
just could
It
not
made no sense.
fathom that I was overweight.
The food that you ate did not match the weight that you gained.
Initially, after that, I gave up hope and
Yeah.
all bets
you're
were
like,
off.
screw it.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I felt. It didn't matter because no matter whether I ate healthy or unhealthy, so it was then all bets were off after that. I
Right.
just had no hope.
So how long ago did you first see Dr. Weiner and kind of start your process to get surgery?
So funny thing, I was of the mindset that it was a cop-out to have surgery.
Yeah.
I really felt like, what
A lot
is
of people
wrong
do.
with me that I cannot lose weight on my own? I just felt like no matter what I did, I couldn't lose weight. And it just was my failure. And it was a personal failure rather than any type of problem within my body. And so I was talking to a colleague of mine at work, and she was telling me that she had had the surgery and had been very successful. And I was amazed by the way she looked. She just fantastic. And I was like, I don't know. I still want to try to do this on my own. She's like, okay, crazy, but you're going to come around to my way of thinking. And then I actually ran into a client of yours that I work with, and she had phenomenal results. And I was talking to her, and then it just kind of like the stars kind of aligned.
Like,
And so it took about 6 or 7 months to go through the process. So
Right.
I had surgery in December of 22. And so I came and started chatting and seeing all the results of people around me. And then I suddenly started hearing more stories, seeing people that you have seen and the success stories. And so then you start to go, okay, maybe this isn't crazy. Maybe this really is what's going to make a difference for me. And thank God, because it was.
Yeah.
So
It probably was the only thing that would have worked because you were also diabetic at the time,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
And not like a little bit of diabetes.
I was not a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, I was
You had
definitely-
relatively pretty
Yes.
high A1C.
Yep.
And were we able to get you on the medications before surgery?
So I actually came to you on Trulicity.
You came to me on Trulicity, which is not
Yeah.
one of the best weight loss
Right.
meds.
Definitely when you switched me over, definitely a big difference.
So we switched you over to Monjaro before surgery.
No.
That was after surgery.
I stuck with Trulicity probably till about 6
Monjaro
months
probably
ago.
wasn't was probably just coming out or wasn't. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly when Monjaro came out, but it was probably right around then. And I bet your insurance didn't cover Monjaro.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't think it did initially because I think
Right.
somebody was like, hey. So I went to Barb and was like, hey. And she's like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But so I've been on Monjaro probably 6 or 7 months. It's
Okay.
been relatively
And so we did a gastric bypass, correct?
correct.
Okay. And how soon after your bypass did your sugar start to get better? And what happened with your diabetes just from the bypass alone?
Immediately, probably 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
I definitely had a huge reduction in my A1C.
Huge
Because I think
reduction.
we did labs at 3 months.
Yeah.
And significantly different.
And I think we kind of rushed to get you on Monjaro.
We did.
Yeah. I
We
was
did.
like, your diabetes
Yes,
is
it's gonna go away really quick.
completely, and we're not going to be able to get you approved for the
Yes.
Monjaro.
Yes.
Yeah. So we did end up getting you on Monjaro. So you're a bypass plus Monjaro. How much weight have you lost?
124 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a
Mhm.
difference.
Amazing.
Huge.
I'm
As a
all-
person. It's a person.
It is a person. I'm going to tell you also, you kind of said that you had you bumped into someone who said that they had had surgery and they were really happy. Do you know how many people I bumped into who said, "Oh, Janet, I talked to Janet and Janet told me."
I am your walking billboard.
Hey,
I just want you to know, I feel like I should have a position here, frankly, because I'm like, hey, she goes to Dr. Weiner.
Yeah, you're always welcome. We're always looking for some PR people.
I'm serious. Like, I'm like, hey.
So how's life different now than it was, say, 120 pounds ago?
I can touch my toes.
Yeah.
I can sit on the floor. Yeah. I can walk 7 miles at the hospital and not be out of breath. Yeah. I can walk up 4 flights of stairs. My knees don't ache. My hips don't ache. It's very different.
It's very different. How's your eating?
It's amazing. I feel much better. I've always been a big meat eater. And it's kind of funny because I feel like my taste buds have changed a little bit. Far less meat. Meat is less appealing to me. And not that I think meat is bad. It's just I still enjoy meat. It's just very different. I love vegetables now, where before I never really had kind of the same satisfying taste or whatever. It's a very different relationship with food. Very different.
Yeah. The bypass plus the Monjaro.
Yes.
You got to feel very much in control of your hunger and food noise and all that stuff.
For sure. It is very, very quiet. Socially, it's a little different.
How's that different?
First off, not drinking. I'm never a big drinker, but a social drinker. People are freaked out when you no longer drink, which I find very interesting.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't drink? It's like you get this crazy look, and I'm like, I just choose not to. It's just better. I just choose not to. And they're like, okay, but it's weird. So learning how to socialize when most socialization in America is around food or alcohol.
Absolutely.
So how do you work around that?
Have you been able to, in your own social circles, maybe suggest other activities to have that quality of time without it being centered around food or alcohol?
So in the process of having surgery, I actually moved purposefully to a house that had a pool. I love to swim. I've always loved to swim. It's one of my favorite exercises because it doesn't feel like exercise to me. I don't like exercise per se, but I love to swim. And so actually having social events around swimming, hanging out by the pool, right? You can eat and drink, but I don't need to.
I'm going to be playing in the pool.
Right, exactly. Sit in the hot tub, whatever. But yeah, so it's just been different. And just frankly, learning how to socialize differently.
And learning maybe how to advocate for yourself in a way that's like creating boundaries, respectful boundaries, but also knowing how to express them for people to know that they don't need to keep asking you questions because it's none of your business.
Yeah, it is funny. People want the story of why you don't drink alcohol, which they assume there's some thing in the background that I just choose not to, which I think is a healthier choice for people with the bypass.
It's 100% the right move for bypass. So, I think I told you not to drink. Yeah.
Yes.
And that is my recommendation is that people don't drink. You shouldn't drink alcohol after a gastric bypass specifically, because we see about a 4% rate of alcoholism.
I'm sure.
Here you are, you're 120 pounds down. Your A1C has gone from high to normal, right?
Yep.
You're probably normal. Right at totally normal.
Yeah.
You are able to do all of these things. Your quality of life has just increased dramatically.
Significantly.
If you were to become an alcoholic, your life would be dramatically worse than it was even before surgery.
For sure. And why would I want to ruin everything that I just did to make my life better?
And so because that 4%, that's 1 in 25.
Yeah, it's too high.
Right? I mean, we do more than that number of surgeries in a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the case, that means once a month, we're essentially ruining someone's life.
Right.
And so that's not an acceptable percent. I mean, for me, I'm 100% and 0%. I want 100% of my patients to say what you say. I am better off because of this surgery.
For sure.
And I want 0% of my patients to have any serious complications or have their life be worse than it was before surgery.
I can't even imagine. What a waste. It would be a waste.
But it's also just like, when you were gaining weight and when you were struggling and you're putting on the weight and you felt like you were not in control of your weight.
Absolutely.
That happens with alcohol too, where this surgery, by changing the absorption of alcohol, it just kind of, it takes away your ability to control your alcohol intake. And again, that's just such a devastating problem. It's something we don't talk about often enough. But I'll tell you, when I see someone 1 year, 2 years after a gastric bypass who's gaining weight, that is my very first question. Is there alcohol use? And it's not the first year, it's the second year.
Interesting.
That's when we typically see it.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so I really applaud your decision. Actually, I'll tell you, lots of patients have made that decision after surgery.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you don't, it's funny because there are so many alcohol alternatives out there,
Right.
which I didn't realize, but it cuts down on the questions when you have a mocktail in your hand.
Yeah.
I went to a birthday party on Friday and had a mocktail and nobody said anything to me like, oh, you're not drinking. I'm like,
here's a little secret. Just put a lime wedge on the edge of your glass and everyone will assume it's
sparkling water in a cup.
Totally, with a lime wedge on the rim. And
It's
you won't
pretty
get
funny.
any questions.
It's hilarious. It actually, it's honestly been baffling to me, but I find it humorous now. It used to really offend me, but now I've just accepted that it's just the way it is and I don't care. But most of the people close to me don't care anymore. They don't ask anymore. They support it 100%. So.
How's eating now? Is it comfortable to eat? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to have a gastric bypass because I'm going to have all these side effects. Do you have, you're on Mounjaro and a gastric bypass.
Correct.
So that's kind of a double whammy if you're going to have some GI issues.
I have no GI issues. I truly have, I really feel blessed. I had a great surgery. I had a great recovery. And I know that's maybe not everybody's story, but I never took any narcotics. I just had a great recovery. It just was so meant to be. I never have once regretted. You told me you may regret this decision a month out.
For the first few weeks,
right?
We see it,
And not once have I regretted it. Not once.
Love it.
It was just meant to be. And so eating has been very comfortable, but I'm also, I get shoulder pain if I eat too much.
Right.
And I don't like the way that feels. And I don't want to feel that way. So I tend to you kind of get to know after a while that this is my portion and this is where I'm at. And that's okay. Yeah. And I've never, like I said, I can eat meat. I love chopped salads. Salads, I wanted a salad so desperately when we first started this journey. And you can't really have a lot of salad initially. It's so chopping it up, doing different things made it much more palatable and easy. I really have no gastric issues.
Amazing.
That's amazing. You probably see that a lot. So.
Oh my God. I was going to say, so many people with the first couple weeks after surgery, like, I just want a salad. I'm like, I know. And I want that for you, just not yet.
Yes, it's crazy.
It takes a little bit of time for that salad to go through comfortably. Yeah.
Yes.
So what's next for you? Anything on the horizons that you're looking forward to, that you're working towards?
I would like to stop sugar-free. That has been something I've struggled with. I love coffee. And I used to have a protein coffee. I got to say, I'm not a big fan of protein shakes right now.
That's okay.
That's okay. Where you are, I don't know that you need them.
So I really don't want protein shakes, but I used to use them as my creamer. Like I would have a nice coffee in the morning and get my protein. So I started going to like your stevias, your truvias. I would like to get rid of them, but I'm not there yet. I don't know how to
try putting cinnamon or vanilla extract in your coffee to add kind of that essence of sweetness without adding actual sweetness. That could be a next step for you.
I will try that because I would really like to quit the sweeteners, but not there yet.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
You'll keep us posted.
Yeah.
I will. I sure will.
Thank you so much for joining us and being patient because I know we're running a little bit late.
Oh, no problem. I got it.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being such a great advocate for our program.
Absolutely.
And for all the things you do as a nurse. And, I think that was the thing that kind of struck me when I first met you. I was like, I bet she's a really good nurse. I just kind of, I saw
I sure hope so.
I saw how you kind of approached everything and how you kind of went through it. And I could tell that there was a real compassion and I think the thing that I think was probably one of the most important things is that through this whole process, you took some of that compassion that you show to everybody else all the time, and you started to show it to yourself.
Which is hard to do.
It's hard to do.
It is.
And I think maybe the first day we met, I don't know if that was there, but I think it is now.
Thanks. Yeah, it really, it's been a journey, and it's truly the greatest thing I ever did for myself, and I don't regret it at all.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Oh, fantastic. What a great story. And so happy for her success.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
And, all that she's accomplished and how much it's improved her life.
Absolutely.
And she's really done everything kind of right. Like she put the time and energy into this, and she eats well. She really follows every rule. Nurses are good patients. Let's be honest.
Doctors probably not so much.
Not so much at all. No, for sure not. I would definitely probably fall into that category. So Zoe, what do we have on the nutrition today?
Well, I figured since I'm recently back from vacation and I talk with patients all the time on how to optimize their vacation for not like throwing away all their progress out the window when they go on a trip, but still enjoying themselves, right? So thought it'd be appropriate to talk about my recommendations while on vacation. And I kind of, yes, we have our nutrition plan, and you have your goals each week that we work on in our SMART goals session with the nutrition program. But if we're thinking about overall tips and general concepts, one would be hydration. Okay. So you're off of your regular schedule, you're maybe out and about more, you're not in your normal environment, and so hydration tends to go way down. And you tend to maybe eat out a lot more, which means you're increasing your sodium intake, so you could be feeling more bloated, etc. So really making sure that hydration stays on point. I always bring a refillable water bottle with me through airport security, empty, of course, and then refill that thing the whole week or however long you're gone. So making sure you keep your water bottle with you, that's huge. I also like to say, make sure you're getting vegetables at least once a day. Yeah. If you're eating out a lot, you're not in your normal routine, it's very easy to let vegetables slide. But just thinking back to how vegetables are that secret weapon to eat a big volume, feel full. And so shoot for having vegetables at least once a day while you're on vacation. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be what you're normally doing, but at least get them in once a day. And then the third piece is steps. So you're on vacation, maybe you're walking around a new city, walking on the beach, whatever you're doing, knowing that it's okay if you're not in your normal exercise routine, offsetting it with extra steps, go exploring, see new things, and get your movement in that way. Yeah, I mean, those are my tips. A little bonus tip is for when you get home, it's pretty easy to you generally get home Sunday or whenever, and then you have to get right back to reality and the house is empty. You don't have any food. Hopefully you've been stocking up your freezer with some of the tips we've been talking about. But a huge help is ordering groceries to be delivered around the time that you're going to get home. So I did on the air, at the airport, set it up to be delivered right before we're going to get home. It doesn't help that I forgot all of my food this week, but it was ordered, it was prepped, the intention was there. But anyway, hopefully that helps for the next time you have a trip plan, especially because it's summertime, lots of trips, lots of vacations. So keep that in mind and don't get stressed out. Just when you get back on track.
Love it. Yeah, great tips. And I think the truth is you don't really have to gain weight over vacation. No. I think most people don't. I think you have to be careful when the vacation becomes a very food-centric vacation. I think if that is what it is, and sometimes that happens, then the walking is just key and the exercise.
And we've had a couple patients that I can actually think of 2 different patients who lost weight on their cruise.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's hard cruises are kind of food central, right? But the different cruises, different people, walk their laps around the perimeter. So it can be done. It can be done. I would say more so feel success with maintaining your weight. Right. But if you lose weight, even better.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move into our economics of obesity segment. It's going to be a fairly quick segment. We're just going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of the patient spending on these medications. So, of course, the number one issue with GLP-1 meds is affordability. Right. I mean, if these things were $50 a month and were reliable, there's no shortages, pretty much 40% of the country would probably be on them. And we'd have just
a lot of up in arms food companies.
Yeah, right, for sure. So I think the first thing that I want to point out, there's this really, really well-designed study that actually looked in Phoenix, and Phoenix 2 hours north of us, and they looked at the average lifespan based on zip code. All right, Zoe, from the shortest lifespan zip code to the longest lifespan zip code, what do you think, how many years difference was it?
Like 10, is it like 10 years?
14.
No kidding.
Yeah, and I think Phoenix is kind of a very...
There's a big, wide range of demographics there.
Huge, yeah, right, because you got a lot of wealthy older people who are retiring there with lots of resources. Right. And then there's also lots of poverty in Phoenix, as there is in pretty much every major city in this country. And so we saw that in South Phoenix, the average lifespan is 71 years old, and in Scottsdale, it's 85. That's 14 years. I mean, that is a tremendous amount of time. There is almost nothing, no other factor, diabetes, heart disease, history of heart attack, almost no health factor has that same amount of impact on your lifespan. Than your socioeconomic status. Yeah. Wow. I think that's the first thing. And I think that's something that we have to really talk about with these medications, because first of all, obesity affects people of lower socioeconomic status unfairly. And access to these medications, we're seeing a lot more access in the higher socioeconomic patients as well. So there is a substantial out-of-pocket cost for these medications. And there's two important things. First of all, we're seeing actually about half the people spending $50 or less a month. That
surprises me, actually.
Yeah, I know. I was just surprised that it was that many. But there are a number of insurance plans that have really good coverage for this. And what happens is when you have good coverage, you're going to be more likely to use the med. So it's probably that the insurance coverage is what's driving a lot of that use.
Insurance coverage and access are maybe two different things.
Totally. So 16% of people spend somewhere between $50 to $300. It's a pretty wide range. 21% $300 to $500, and 9% over $500. But what we're seeing is that over the last 6 months, the average amount that people are spending on these meds has increased substantially.
Yeah, I think we know that just by talking with patients and what we are seeing, but it's good to see the data that supports it.
Yeah, so there are some people out there, and I think if you have insurance coverage and a really great plan and they cover it, then these meds are a great option for you, and we're seeing a lot of success. But I think the majority of people should expect to spend probably a minimum of $100, more likely $200, $300, $400, $500 a month, which for a lot of people is just, especially you get a husband and wife and they both want to use it, and all of a sudden it gets pretty crazy. We work with patients pretty aggressively. We have a lot of creative dosing strategies. I think that's what we call them on the show. We won't really go into details about exactly what they are. There's a number of reasons why we don't. And so with these, we can usually get people on a decent dose of the meds, the real meds, not compounded stuff, for about $200 a month. A weight loss dose, maybe not the max weight loss, but a weight loss dose for about $200 a month. And so, that's difficult now because of the shortages, but I think the shortages are going to improve. But yeah, the out-of-pocket costs are still quite substantial. My thinking on this is that they will be for at least another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, until the factories really get ramped up.
There's one little sliver of hope, and that's what I've talked about in the past about the drug patents, and specifically with Ozempic, how there's 2 patents, one that expires in 2026 and one that expires in 2031. That patent in 2026, I think there's some people taking a shot at it. And so we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of money to be made if you can get.
I was just going to say that.
So we may see some of these generic drug companies. We may see some capital investments where people are putting a lot of money into fighting that patent, knowing that if it pays off, that there could be big payout for a generic manufacturer. So I could see that happening. In 2026, we could potentially see generic semaglutide, not compounded, but FDA approved, regulated from a factory, that follows the standard manufacturing
Here's to hoping.
Here's to hoping.
We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, we for sure will be watching that. So that'll be interesting.
All right, now we've got our questions submitted by followers, whether it's YouTube, social media, from our website. And we have Joelle here because Sierra, our normal producer and extraordinaire, is out.
Yes.
But we've got Joelle here to read us our questions today. So what do we've got?
All right, so this question comes from YouTube from your post-op diet video from Blue Sky Vibes, and they ask, what about green drinks?
Okay, green drinks. So I assume we're talking about the powder, the green powder that you mix with water that tastes like dirt. Now, some of them taste pretty good. Here's the thing. Yes, you're getting micronutrients. Yes, you're getting phytonutrients. You're getting some good stuff in there. What are you not getting? You're not getting fiber.
Right.
So the whole key piece of eating a pound of vegetables each day and working towards increasing your vegetable intake, like I was talking about earlier on the vacation and the nutrition segment, it's about the feeling of fullness, satisfaction, the benefits that we get from the fiber. Green drinks, you're not getting any of that.
Right.
It's an expense. It's kind of like a waste of money, in my opinion. If it's something that you enjoy to drink, make sure that there's no added sugar. But if it's a little extra kind of something to spice up the water that you maybe want to add into your day, fine. Does not replace your vegetable intake.
Yeah. What about matcha tea? What do you think about matcha
Yeah,
tea?
great.
Yeah. I think matcha, there's a lot of value to matcha tea, but again, there's no fiber in it.
Right.
It's a drink.
It's a drink.
Yeah.
Maybe it's an alternative to, coffee if you're wanting some caffeine.
Right. And I think the other important point is that the smoothies are good. We're big on we call them the set point smoothies.
Right.
And that's the,
Because you're not removing the fiber.
Exactly.
I have a funny story about matcha real quick. I had a friend that was like, "Oh yeah, when I don't want to have caffeine, I just get a matcha." I'm like, "There's caffeine in matcha." So she's like, "Oh no, really?"
Yeah. No wonder I haven't been sleeping.
Right.
Yeah, there's I think about half as much caffeine as there is in the regular coffee or black tea, which is a fully caffeinated tea, in the green tea. Yeah, there's decent caffeine in it for sure. Yeah. All right, what's our next question, Joelle?
All right, the next question is also from YouTube, what to eat after bariatric surgery. This one's from Mr. Rhino 12667. I'm 1 year out and stalled, down 200 pounds, 450 to 250. Still want to lose another 30 pounds. What can I do? I had a bypass. Should I go DS?
Yeah. So DS is a duodenal switch.
Can we first celebrate that he's lost 200 pounds?
Absolutely.
Like, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Okay,
totally.
continue.
No, I mean, but in all honesty, I think that is the essence of the answer that I think that we need to give here. So first of all, converting from a gastric bypass to a duodenal switch is a Herculean effort. It is probably a 5 or 6 hour surgery with, I would estimate, somewhere in the neighborhood of a 15 to 20% rate of serious complication. And when I say
Sounds like
serious,
a double black diamond.
yeah, it's more than a double black diamond. We'll cover double black diamonds next episode. But it's an incredibly difficult surgery with a very high complication rate.
And how much extra weight do people tend to lose?
There's really no studies on this because it's just
not worth
such a
the risk.
boneheaded idea.
Yeah.
If someone got up and presented this, then honestly, I would like to believe in our national society, it's a pretty responsible group. But I think they'd be throwing Molotov cocktails from the audience. In an academic way, people would get up and really lean into someone and say, what you're doing is irresponsible and dangerous. And, people, I've seen that. People do say that and usually appropriately so. It was very interesting. I saw this very early in my career with a band when there was a couple of kind of shills out there who were in the pocket of the company that made the band, and they were talking about how great this band was. And there were some people who came up and they were like, I don't know what's happening because my patients aren't losing any weight and are having all kinds of terrible problems. So what am I, either I'm doing something wrong or your data is totally inaccurate. And it got really hostile. So, in the academic communities, people think, oh, doctors are, I think doctors have a mixed opinion. Some people think doctors are in general good. I'd like to think that most of us are. Some people think doctors are kind of money grubbers just like everybody else. But I'll tell you, in the academic societies, that's not the case. I mean, there's a lot of honesty. At least I can speak about the ASMBS, which I'm pretty active in. There's a lot of honesty in that group, and people tell the truth, and they something like this just really wouldn't fly in our society. So it's not, I think you'd have a very hard time even finding a surgeon willing to do this. If you come into my office,
first do no harm, right?
First do no harm. Absolutely. If you come into my office and ask me to convert your bypass to a duodenal switch, I would say, you got the wrong guy here. So what can you do to lose another 30? It gets down to our whole set point lowering conversation, right? There's 4 ways to lower your set point. There's improved nutrition, eating higher quality food. There's building muscle and using it. There's the medications, and then there's revision. I just told you revision's not really an option. Most people for revision surgery for bypass will either make the pouch smaller or lengthen the limbs, and even that really isn't done much because it doesn't work very well and causes issues too. So, 30 pounds at this point, I would really just push you to follow the metabolic reset diet, work on the nutrition. I don't know that I would dig into GLP-1 meds until I was certain that you'd optimize
exhausted
nutrition.
all those options. Yeah.
Yeah. For 30 pounds, it's a lot to add the GLP-1s. Something that we're seeing, and I think this is going to be really interesting, is that people respond differently to GLP-1 meds than they do to when they've had bariatric surgery. And so where typically we're saying, like, if you're going to be on these meds, you're on them for life. And for non-bariatric surgery patients, that's probably the case. I think we may see a little bit longer durability of these meds in bariatric surgery patients. So, I would probably exhaust everything nutritionally, exercise-wise. And then, what I might have a conversation with this patient about is like, let's try 3 or 4 months of these meds, see what happens. And maybe, once a year we have to touch you off with something. You up with something. But I would give that a shot and see. But I would still, I'd focus on nutrition for sure.
And we welcome you to join the nutrition program, and I can help you with getting that nutrition dialed in, that exercise dialed in to help you get those last 30 pounds off.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Joel, what's our last question?
All right, the last question came via email from Angela. She says she is 5 foot 8 inches tall, and she had gastric bypass surgery in April of this year. Her highest weight was 254 pounds and her lowest was 161. She's struggling with not going below 161. She feels like she looks unhealthy at that weight. What suggestions do you have for how to maintain a healthy weight of 165 without going too low and looking unhealthy?
What do you think, Zoe?
Well, I would say if she's concerned about looking unhealthy, that means that there's probably not very much muscle mass. So maybe instead of thinking about, oh, do I have to add, bread back in or whatever it is, maybe just not really focusing so much on just eating as little as possible.
Right.
Really optimizing the quality of the food, making sure you're still getting in enough protein, but maybe ramping up that strength training to build a little bit of extra muscle and give maybe a more, healthy look if that's kind of what you're going after.
Yeah. I think when we look at too much weight loss, and there's, we see these kind of super responders, people who lose a ton of weight. And I don't know that this would quite categorize this patient as a super responder. To me, this is probably a little better than average and what we'd expect. We have a calculator on our website that you can use and plug these numbers in and see. But my hunch is it's a little more than we'd expect, but nothing crazy. I think the biggest mistake you can make is like, well, I'm going to eat a bunch of crap now and I'm going to intentionally gain weight.
Don't want to get too thin.
You will overshoot every time. And I've seen that a lot.
And you also, now the metabolic thermostat has been brought to 161. If that's been your lowest weight, there tends to be a little bit of a buffer anyway. Generally, was it like 10 pounds probably from the lowest weight is kind of where you're going to sit, where your body's going to feel the safest and happiest. So I wouldn't worry too much about it quite yet.
There's probably going to be a little bit of natural rebound, like you said,
So maybe just hang in there, keep us updated, and we can help you out if that does happen.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I would kind of point out is that if you continue to lose weight, and sometimes when people do look unhealthy, I can almost when I walk into the office and I see a new patient and they kind of they look a little too thin, they look a little unhealthy, that can be from an ulcer. So you're a year out. I mean, we see ulcers at a year out for sure. So if you have significantly low iron or any difficulty eating, any abdominal pain, then it's worth talking to your bariatric surgeon, getting an endoscopy, making sure you don't have an ulcer. Those can be treated with medications. You want to get on those before they perforate or bleed. But I think that's when people lose too much weight. First of all, the other piece of that is smoking. So if, they don't mention if they're smoking, I don't know if they are, but if you smoke after a gastric bypass, that gives you an ulcer and that makes you lose too much weight and also makes you look very unhealthy. So I think the first thing is make sure there's no tobacco use. If there's tobacco use, that has to be stopped immediately. Scope for an ulcer. And then I think like what Zoe said, just really wait for that rebound weight, work on the muscle training and all the healthy eating.
Yeah.
But
there are a lot of unknowns here.
Yeah, but my hunch is that at this point, if they just kind of work on their lifestyle and focus on the things you mentioned, it'll all correct itself in the next 6 to 8 months. So.
All right, wonderful. Well, that about wraps us up.
Yep.
This podcast today was produced by our guest producer, Hoel, and of course, Rhiannon Griffin. And the editing is done over with our team at AutoGrow. And of course, a special thanks to our patient guest today, Janet.
Yeah. And please tune in next week. We have one of my most memorable patients. I operated on her 10 years ago and managed to get in touch with her kind of through the podcast. And she really tells a harrowing story of survival after surgery gone wrong in Mexico. And she's doing fantastic now, and it's great to catch up with her, but I think there's, really fascinating stories. So tune in next week for sure to hear her story. And of course, check us out on social media or our website. And if this podcast is valuable and if you're enjoying it, please share it with a friend or family member or someone else who's struggling with obesity, who is looking for some kind of common sense, scientifically accurate, and also empathic advice on how to manage your obesity. And of course, join our nutrition program, or for personal assistance, our Pound of Cure Platinum program.
Absolutely. Yeah. See you next time.
Bye-bye.